Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Sleep In Sunday. And today on Sleep In Sunday, we have special guests, and our special guest today is a Californian. So we have others on the show, Tuka. We have others, we have Californians, and we have Zoomers. And you, my friend, are a transcendental California. Tukaram Prabhu runs the Laguna Beach Temple. Here's his bio off the top of my mind. Runs the Laguna Beach Temple. He's responsible for a farming community, runs a vegan restaurant, is a father of 6 children. He's traveled truthfully barefoot all around India to holy places from Badrinath to Setubanda in the south. He's a Sanskrit pundit, a sacred literature pundit. But the biggest part of the bio, he's one of my dearest friends. He's one of my inspirations. He's one of my go-to people when I'm going through problems in life. It's good to have people in your life to turn to when they're your peers, but I call them guru peers. Kaustubha is one to me. Tukaram is definitely one to me. They're people who are your friends that you can look up to because you trust the way they live and the way they think and the way they behave. And I can't speak enough for this special guest, Tukaram Prabhu. He's a great leader in this community there, and he really gives a lot of inspiration. And if you're not tuned into his classes on Instagram, they're wonderful. Welcome, Tukaram.
Thank you, brother.
Hare Krishna. While we're at it, what is officially, I can't remember your official, what's your Instagram handle there?
Tukaram.das.
Tukaram, Tukaram.das. So write that down, follow him today. Welcome, Prabhu. Honored to have you.
Thanks so much, brother. It's great to be here.
It sounded like you're a bit underwater there, Tuka. Maybe, again, would it be possible to pull the mic closer to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little underwater. It's Laguna Beach.
High tide? Not really, but let's go. Speak good and loud. You're just speaking into the microphone in the computer?
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow the quality dropped. If you're listening live on
like this? They have like this kind of thing?
Probably have something like that somewhere, but I don't know.
You sound much better now.
Yeah, maybe you got to just speak louder. You speak louder.
Okay, you guys keep letting me know if there's a problem. I'll keep yelling at the top of my lungs. How about that?
Okay.
It's what you do best.
We're going to get there in a couple minutes anyway.
It'll go there very quick. Kaustubha, do you guys know each other?
Of course we know each other.
How do you guys know each other besides just being around?
We've been around for a long time. That's just it,
I met Kaustubha in 1991 in New York.
Oh, okay.
I went to help set up the Rath Yatra there. I also met Paramananda there at that time. He was in the bathroom lifting weights at 4 o'clock in the morning when I went to go take a bath. At that time, he had his own room. Maybe you were sharing with Yogi and a few other guys, but you were kind of a You were a senior man there in New York at that time.
Was I in 91?
I was on the floor in the main room. You got a spot off to the side.
Okay.
About 30 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
We are going to dive in with what do you call these questions?
Sometimes we
Kaustubha?
call this like a prophet style interview where we just kind of throw forward just like these very general questions about the human condition. And so we thought, Tuka's a wise person, he's the kind of person, like in the book, The Prophet, it's just questions, very general questions being placed before a wise person. And so we thought we'd do that with Tukaram today. You ready, Tukaram?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, let's start here. I would like to ask you to speak about resentment, right? So resentment is something that a lot of people, feel and struggle with. And as yogis, resentment is one of those kind of things that can kind of take over your consciousness, whereas yogis our business is to take over our consciousness, not to be controlled by it. So could you please just speak about resentment?
Yeah. Sure. I think resentment gets a bad rap.
Okay.
I think generally speaking, if you look around today on social media, you'll find that resentment is described as being like taking poison and hoping the other person dies. And I think there should be two types of resentment.
Just 1 second, Tukaram Prabhu. Is everyone having as difficult time hearing as I am?
Yeah, I can't hear so good.
So we can barely hear you.
We're struggling, my friend.
All right, I'm going to scream bloody murder. How
There
about
you go.
that?
Okay, we'll take it.
Definitely better.
Okay, I'm with you guys. I was trying to do the holy man thing.
Yeah. No, we don't want the holy man. We want the insane man.
I'll do the holy man and I'll scream bloody murder. That's what I'm doing from now on.
Okay.
We have the word love in English, which acts as a, it's a term for everything. You have like a bunch of terms in Greek or even in Spanish. You have like amor and desear in Spanish, or you have agape and eros, etc. in Greek for the different types of love. Philia also in Greek, philosophical love. But in English, we just have one word, love. And so if you're eating at McDonald's, they have the slogan, "I'm loving it." But then we also use love to refer to divine love for the deity or something like that, as well as for a TV show you watch or a meal you ate. I think resentment also is a bit of an inaccurate phrase. It gets used for different things. And I think some of the things resentment gets used for have a bad rap. So there's one type of resentment. The first type of resentment we'll call resentment with a capital R. That kind of resentment is bitterness. Resentment in general is defined as anger towards a perceived injustice to yourself. Someone's treated you unfairly or unkindly, and you have kind of a righteous anger about it. Sometimes that anger is insatiable, and you're bitter just for the sake of being bitter. And there's no way to pacify you. And you get off on feeling some bitterness, some hatred, some negativity towards somebody else. That kind of resentment is like taking poison and hoping the other person dies. That kind of resentment needs to be given up. That kind of resentment has no place in the progressive spiritualist's life, or anybody's life for that matter. You can be an atheist, and that is simply going to bring you down. There's another type of resentment that I think is what I want to focus on.
Good resentment.
Healthy resentment.
Lowercase resentment.
Happy resentment. How about a happy resentment?
Happy, but I do think it's progressive. And so here you go. And I'm just putting my chin in case I do something awful. Okay.
Every time your volume goes down, we can't hear you at all. So
I
keep it
know.
good and loud.
If you have one of those mics, like Kaustuba's got one of those head things where you pick up the mic, maybe
Yeah.
one of your kids has one running around.
My wife, and she's looking at me foul, which means I'm not gonna be able to find it. I'm gonna keep screaming.
Yeah. And when you're looking straight ahead, it helps too.
Okay, I'm gonna look straight ahead. I'm gonna fire away. I'm gonna do my best.
Pages and pages of like microphone technical details are coming up on the chat board. Ignore them all. I don't think you'll be able to figure it out and talk. You need an assistant jumping in there, playing around with your preferences.
Is it that bad?
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a box, and people are
Underwater.
hitting that box with sticks and throwing water on that box.
But when you're leaning a little bit to your left and speaking good and loud, I think that's when it's working best. So let's hear this progressive resentment.
All right, I just put it up as high as it'll go.
Okay.
My wife is going to find me a mic.
Oh, great.
And my kids got something. We're gonna go. I got 6 of them. We have 6 of them together. So
Someone's got to have some
you've got
headphones.
to a mic. It's gonna happen.
Okay.
Bear with me for a minute while she figures it out. We'll make it happen. There's the other kind of resentment I want to focus on. And that kind of resentment, I'll describe for you. You guys, maybe you guys will recognize it. And the hope is that it points to something a little deeper, that's a bit more therapeutic. Sometimes somebody does you wrong, and you are justifiably upset about it. And you care about that person, and you have them on a pedestal in your life. You have an expectation of them, which I don't think is wrong. It's not possible to live in this world and have no expectations whatsoever of other people. The very idea of trust indicates that you cede some control because you have good expectations of somebody to have your back. Even as a social mammal, you require relationships where you expect things of people. For instance, that they'll watch your back while you sleep, keep the fire going while you sleep, they'll protect you when you can't protect yourself. And so trust means expectation, and people have to trust somebody, otherwise you live in a very lonely world. And so sometimes somebody breaks your trust, or betrays your trust, or does you wrong when you thought they had your back. At that time, you're upset and angry. That also goes under the name of resentment. And I think that type of resentment has a lot of value, because what it does really, a cell phone cover, maybe a cell phone cover, maybe it's just my ears, but I hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Charlie. That makes me feel better. Thank you. I'm going to just keep going.
Okay.
Hopefully I don't hurt anybody's ears by screaming too loud. And my wife's going to go and get some highfalutin microphone. It's just now coming in a minute, but I'm going to keep screaming away.
Okay.
The lips comes in handy. If it's that bad, Tim, then I'm really having a tough time. My lips, I'm good for Charlie, and I'm going to get back to business here. The microphone's en route. Okay. That other type of resentment has value. And here's why. Sometimes you don't want to let go of a relationship. You want to stay in a relationship, be it platonic or romantic, with a senior or a junior or your peer. And you trust them. And they betray your trust. You don't want to downgrade them. You don't want to evaporate the relationship. And resentment in that instance ends up being a placeholder for the relationship. It keeps the relationship alive and lets the person know that things aren't okay, that the relationship is on life support, that there's a problem. that they need to make some amends, that there has to be some reparation, that things have to be made right. And that relationship allows that person some space and gives them some fair warning, so they have a chance to make things right. And that kind of resentment is valuable. It's what deep people do when there's a problem. They don't just immediately downgrade the other person or walk away or move on. Problem. They recognize the relationship is not right, and they give the person space to step up to the plate and make amends so that peace and order can be restored to a relationship. And there's a little bit of a flow chart that I give people if they want to navigate through that resentment, which, depends on the other person. It takes two, because resentment is very much relational. It's very much an emotion you feel always towards somebody. When you say you resent a circumstance, if you dig a little bit, you'll find you resent a person behind the circumstance. That there's always somebody who's responsible for wronging you. And so there's always an individual or a group of individuals behind resentment. All right. Raghunath or Kaustubha, do you want to jump in at this point?
To me, that doesn't, Prabhuji, thanks for sharing. To me, that doesn't seem like a resentment then. It seems like you're unhappy with the way things turned out. The person let you down. You're putting a placeholder in, but you're not seething for that person, or you're not carrying around a darkness or a revenge or a how have I been. There's some hurt, but the hurt isn't like a vengeful hurt. Like, how dare this person? It's just sort of like, this person let me down. If I feel like it's different than that capital R in a lot of ways, to the point where I might not even call it resentment. What do you think about that?
What would you call it?
A person just had a high, well, it depends. If I'm in the senior position, like a father to a son, he just couldn't live up to, he or she couldn't live up to these expectations I had. And maybe and sort of a placeholder. And then, of course, there's ultimately, like, maybe that son can't be that person. You know what I mean? That I wanted them to be, or the student. It might be different if it's in the other version also. If it's the teacher let me down, or the guru let me down, or the father let me down. There's a difference between. I hope this person gets their life together for their benefit. I actually have nothing bad about them. They just let me down. But there's something when someone's really, it's almost like I was invested too much or too attached to their behavior to be a certain way, that I can actually get angry about it. So I don't know. What do you think, Kaustubha?
It seems to me like what I think what Tukaram was pointing out is really valuable is that, like, there's a type of indignation that's valuable, right? That we can't just whitewash it in the name of being spiritual or something like that, because you're not actually getting to the heart of what you need to get to. And then there's that indignation with a deep sense of bitterness that's like more destructive, something like that. Maybe does that capture Tukaramji?
Thank you, Kaustubha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Here's what I would say, Raghunath, to you, my dear friend, my best friend in the whole wide world. There's something in sociology called plausibility structure. A plausibility structure is something which is so common that nobody bothers giving evidence for it anymore. It becomes a premise of a given group. And so I think that resentment, in the way you've defined it, is a very narrow definition of the term. And so the first type of resentment I described fits perfectly with what you would call resentment. However, resentment in the dictionary definition is going to be anger or bitterness or indignation towards perceived unfair treatment. And so certainly what I'm describing qualifies as resentment. If you downgrade the relationship, then it's disappointment. And so what I'm talking about is sometimes you don't want, if you examine your heart, somebody's wronged you and you don't want to downgrade the relationship. They could be a junior, but you don't want to lose faith in them. You don't want to just be disappointed in them and move on and see them in a lesser light or realize they're immature. You actually want them to make things right. You want them to restore the relationship. They've done something wrong. That would also go under the definition of resentment. And you would be struggling. You'd have to speak paragraphs to figure out a language of what you did. Because resentment doesn't fit the bill. So you're left struggling and giving paragraphs and paragraphs to describe what could be described really easily as resentment. That's what the different R, a capital R versus a lowercase r. So instead of giving that narrow definition of resentment or a narrow definition of love, we have to expand our understanding of the term to include all the things the term could be.
Sure.
Exactly what I was trying to communicate to get people to look at the term in a little different way. Now, if you want to get semantical and you want to just say, well, I prefer a different term, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and somebody just prefers a different term, then I'll just ask them, what term would you like to use? And then we'll use that term to describe the same emotion.
Sure.
And
I got you.
Makes sentences, I'm going to be like, hey, let's just call it resentment, right?
All right, so I'm going to move on because I got a lot of questions for you, and I want to hear your ideas for this. How about a good friend? We consider you a good friend. What does it mean to be a good friend in this world?
Well, hold on, buddy. I think it plugs in here. No plug. I got a mic, and it doesn't plug into my computer.
I don't think that will help.
Yeah, that's not going to work. How about your iPhone? Did you try going into your iPhone instead of your computer? Get on Zoom on your iPhone.
Hang on. It's coming.
Have them sign on your iPhone for you.
Have them being my good wife. Give me a second. What's the meeting ID? Does somebody know right off the top of their head?
249.
Yep.
949.
Yep.
810.
Okay, and what's the password?
507.
Yep.
854.
Hold on. My wife just.
I thought that was our secret code, Kaustubha. Now everybody on Facebook knows our secret codes.
Whoops.
The secret code.
I thought they had to chant one round a day to get that code. Now everybody on Facebook knows that code.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mess. Now I found another microphone. So now I'm on the phone. I found another mic. What do we got? Oh, that plugs right in. That plug in? No, plugs in my phone.
All right. Kaustubha, should we do the good friend one? Is that the?
Well, you already started it. Yeah, sure.
Where you want to take this?
Let's get him hooked up here.
All right.
Maybe this will be better.
Hey, if you're listening on Facebook, we do this every day. Usually doesn't happen like this where we can't get the microphone working, but we do this every day. You can join us, email us, wisdomofthesages@gmail.com. We will again give you the secret codes, or you can just listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or Stitcher. We got our special guest, Tukaram, if you're joining us late. He runs the Laguna Temple in Laguna Beach, California. It's where me and my wife got married there. It's where my...
Is this better?
We need to unmute him, right?
No, he's
still on his computer, right?
Yeah.
turn off your... Are you on your computer?
He's probably that number at the end of the list here.
Oh, I get it.
Oh, he's Temple.
Here's Temple.
Asked to unmute. Unmute yourself. There we go.
How about now?
Way better.
Million times better.
Okay.
And now we're going to turn off your computer.
And is your other one off now?
Computer's off.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, so much better.
What does it mean to be a good friend, Tukaram?
No, don't do that to me yet. Don't do that to me yet, brother. Here's why. I must have lost your attention span, but I was just describing.
That's not hard to do with me.
I was just describing what to do with resentment. So here's the deal.
What do you do?
Sometimes the resentment you feel is towards somebody who did you wrong, but you don't want to let go of the relationship. You don't want to downgrade that person. You don't want to dismiss them. You don't want to see them in a different light. You want to give them a chance to fix things. That kind of resentment becomes a placeholder that gives the other person notice that there's something wrong, but also creates a space for them to make things right. First thing you have to do in that case is you have to think about, if I had been in a similar situation, would I have done the same thing? If you would have done the same thing that the other person did that you're upset about, you can't be upset at them anymore. It becomes hypocritical and you got to let it go. The first thing I do when I feel resentment towards somebody because of a perceived injustice and I want them to fix things is I ask myself, what would I have done in a similar situation? If what I would have done in a similar situation is more or less the same thing, I let it go. I let it go and I restore the relationship. Because how can I blame them for something I would have done myself? That's number one. If it turns out that you wouldn't have done the same thing, if it turns out you wouldn't have done the same thing in a similar situation, and you're upset about somebody who's done something wrong to you, but it's legitimately something wrong because you've gone through that checklist, then it gets a little stickier. Then you create some space and time. You communicate to that person what they did wrong. You give them an appropriate amount of time to fix things. You try to work with them so things can be made right. But sometimes it doesn't happen. In that case, what's usually happened is this. Of course, now I'm holding my phone, but I'll survive. I've been prepping for this. In that case, sometimes you do need to let somebody go and you need to see them in a different light. And usually what's happened is my wife is rushing to my aid. She's going to figure out some way to prop up my phone. Thanks, sweetheart. I appreciate it. No, I got to go. All right. I think I'm lovely.
You are. It's very
I'm
lovely.
feeling good. Thank you. Thank you, Raghu. I appreciate that. I feel validated. Sometimes you need to let somebody go and put them on you had them on the wrong pedestal. And even then, there's a lesson to learn. When you put somebody on a pedestal they shouldn't be on, it usually means that they deceived you. And if they deceived you, it really means that you wanted them to deceive you. We usually think of people lying to us and deceiving us as being something that was done to us that's wholly their fault. But it's not actually the case. What happens in life, in many instances, is that there's a gap between where we're at and where we'd like to be. And what we do is we find people who will tell us we're further along than we actually are. And that con of being made to believe that you're further on than you actually are, it comes at a price. And that price is that it's not real. You've been deceived. And in due course of time, that person who deceived you is going to get something out of you. They're going to extract something from you. They were looking for something, so they deceived you. And you wanted that easy win, and so you allow them to deceive you, to tell you were more handsome or more beautiful or stronger or more intelligent or more self-realized or whatever. whatever you were looking for, that's your Achilles heel, that wasn't realistic. You found someone who whispered those sweet nothings to you. And in due course of time, it was revealed that they were shallow. They were sweet nothings. It wasn't actually where you were at. In that case, you need to let that person be downgraded, because they did not deserve to be on the pedestal you put them on, but you put them there, even though they didn't deserve to be there. And that speaks volumes about you and where you're at. And it's an opportunity for you to become more realistic, become more honest, and set appropriate expectations of people. And not, if you don't want to be lied to, if you don't want to be deceived, then when people tell you something that's not true, it doesn't impress you. It doesn't touch you. In fact, you think, why are you telling me something about myself that isn't true? It actually acts as a warning sign. That person's probably looking to get something out of me. That person's probably looking to move into some kind of codependency. So, resentment A, that seething anger, there's no place for that. You got to let that go, because it's unsatiable. It's never going to go anywhere. Resentment B, somebody did you wrong and you're upset. That's valuable. It shows your relationship's on life support, but you don't want to dismiss the person. It's actually a good thing. That second type of resentment, make sure it's not hypocritical. If it's not hypocritical, give them space and time. If you can't let go after they've shown you where they're really at, that means you're in on the con. We've met the enemy and he is us, like that old cartoon Pogo said. And then that's an opportunity for you to reframe, why did I get sucked into this, and grow from the experience. And then you let the person downgrade themselves. And then you're no longer going to be set up for that. You grow from the experience, and it's no longer an Achilles heel. You know what you were looking for that you didn't deserve. And then you leave the door open. If that person changes and upgrades, they can come back in. And when you do that, when you realize what you were looking for that wasn't like realistic, then your resentment evaporates on that same day at that same moment, and it resolves itself. And so resentment becomes a healthy, transitory emotion for a relationship that is on life support before you downgrade the person and move on. All right, so that was the major point I wanted to communicate. It was a little bit of a troubleshoot or a flow chart for resentment and how to see it in a positive light as an opportunity for growth. Raghu, back to you.
Back to me. Should we do these in a row, Kaustubha, or should we jump around?
Whatever you like.
I really want to get also this idea of being a good father, being a good mother. And it's something that we were both me and Tuka were in a panel for a bunch of devotees, actually. I think I don't know if it was officially all Hare Krishna devotees or Bhakti people. Maybe people are into it for years. I felt sort of like it was. It sort of felt very in-house, and I felt like the outsider because I'm such a Bhakti outsider, and I'm okay with that. But Tukaram, it was like a men's conference, and the thing was on what it means to be a father. And Tukaram corrected the host immediately and said, you're getting a lot of parenting answers, but being a good father is different than being a good mother. And he made very interesting distinctions. Do you want to talk about what it's like to be a good father and a mother, Tukaram? Prabhu?
Sure, Raghu. And forgive me, but I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
No, I can't hear you self-deprecate and not say something. So this whole like Bhakti outsider thing, and you felt like a crow amongst swans. I don't know what you're talking about, man. It pains my.
Well, I didn't quite say a crow, but I'll go with that.
Where'd the crow come from?
Sort of like
You felt like the worst person in the world, like the scum on my shoe. No, so listen, I mean, Raghu, you're my inspiration. I look up to you so much.
You know what I mean to say, Prabhu. I don't raise my family within. I'm not really part of any institution. I live on the outside. I'm in the fringes. I live in the woods. There's no local temple around here I feel part of. You know what I mean? I'm just sort of out there on the periphery. no matter what I say, there will be no person within the Hare Krishna movement be like, that's heresy.
Listen.
I'm like off the radar. I'm off the Hare Krishna radar for the most part in what I do. I'm okay with that. I appreciate it. I have no ill feelings, but I'm out there. I'm out there. You know what I mean? You run a temple. You're like a temple priest. It's a beautiful thing. They're both different, and viva la difference!
Okay, so I'm going to respond. And there's no version of this where you get the last word. So just let me get the last word and we can move on. It pains my ears to hear you critique yourself. Your Super Soul Farms is a temple, you knucklehead. You are the priest at the temple in Super Soul Farms. You're up at 5 o'clock every day ministering to your flock. I don't know how you don't see this. We follow the same rules. We follow the same lifestyle. We're both monogamous with a vow. We're both sober with a vow. We both meditate for hours a day with a vow. We were both ordained priests. We both go on pilgrimage multiple times a year. You have a virtual temple and a physical structure. You are a priest. You're everything. And you are not limited by that. And you have like a real wide reach. And you inspire people from tons of walks of life. But I'm inspired by you. I'm a temple priest, and you inspire me as a priest and as a man and as a parent. Your children do kirtan with you every day. I mean, you're living the life of Riley. You're like at the top of the pops. I don't know. And I don't know how, I get the self-deprecating thing, but it's not going to happen on my watch. Like, you're not going to get away with it. So give me the last word. Don't ever do this in front of me again, because it actually pains my ears, because you are my hero.
Okay, let's go on with this
All right.
parenting conversation.
And I guess, you know what, let's get into good friend first, just because we're friends. You and I are friends. The whole Gibran thing and the prophet and that style of speaking, and this happens a lot in religious literature. This happens a lot. There's a whole series of books by the Ramakrishna Mission called Thus Spake Jesus Christ, Thus Spake Muhammad, Thus Spake. And it's their kind of treatment of other religions, where they try to show that every religion just teaches what they teach. It's kind of it's a classic thing people do. They take other ideas and they say, well, what they really mean in the Bible is this. And then they say what they mean. And they they kind of reduce all other positions to being, bad communication. And if people really, were able to communicate properly, they would just be telling you what their party line is. But a lot of times, even if you look at like the Hebrew Bible and the 10 Commandments, if you look at the mitzvahs, the 600 plus mitzvahs in the Hebrew Bible, you get just these utterances, like this is what it is. And those utterances are, they're on the authority of the person who speaks. There's that charismatic leader, that prophet, whether it's Moses or Abraham or Jesus or the apostles, or it's Muhammad, or in the Hadith, it's his followers. And it's just like, thus spake, and they just say something, and that's what it is. It's like, what is it to be a good friend? And then I say some koans or some aphorisms, and that's what it is. And based on how nifty I sound and how cool I sound, then people take it seriously, and they derive some meaning from it. And there's value in that. I mean, there's value in that. 5 billion people in the world participate in spiritual traditions where that's the main revelation. That's never been my cup of tea. And so as soon as we say, what's it mean to be a good friend? I immediately think, hey, let's define good. Because there's another plausibility structure that we all agree on what the word good means. But in fact, we don't. Guaranteed, on this call, we all have a bunch of different understandings of what good means. And so as soon as you talk about what's it mean to be a good friend or father or parent or mother or husband or wife or teacher or student, as soon as you say what's it mean to be a good one of those, the first thing you got to do is you have to determine what is good. What is good? And that's a whole thing in philosophy. It's not like that's just assumed in philosophy. And so, yeah, Arvin, you're right. good is relative. And that's one position on goodness, that everything is fundamentally relative. And that it's up to each individual to decide what good is for them. But there's a whole nother movement in philosophy that there are absolutes and that we can determine what is good, objectively speaking. I mean, there's a whole department of philosophy that deals with this. I don't know how into this I want to get because I want to answer your question, but I at least got to do an homage to it. Otherwise, like, I got Aristotle like in my head telling me that, like, you know, I'm not supplying sufficient evidence. And I'm not going to be able to read all the quotes from you guys. So if there's something somebody says that you guys want me to respond to,
We'll bring it up.
I'm not on a computer anymore, so I'm just going to ignore the chat and focus. It's because I just get one line, then I got to click on it. It becomes a trip for me. So I got the mic, but I lost the chat. So I'm gonna trust you guys.
Yeah,
my good
lose
friends.
The chat. We'll check the chat.
Me. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. You know, axiology is a department of philosophy that deals with value. It houses aesthetics and moral philosophy. Moral philosophy essentially is what is good, and aesthetics is what is beautiful. What is good and what is beautiful, and those two things get put into one subject in philosophy called axiology, which is the study of axioms. Axios. It's a study of kind of like, you know, what we determine to value. The word axiom sometimes is used to mean something which is self-evidently true, but if you really get into it in like modern logic, axioms are things that you accept as fundamentally true, whether or not they are, so you can start to do business and build an argument. So they're hypothetical premises that sometimes are taught over time. So the word axiom has two meanings. In philosophy, it means something which is self-evidently true, and in logic nowadays, it means something which you're going to accept as true, whether or not it is, and you're going to work with it. And so axiology is the attempt to figure out what is fundamentally valuable. If something's beautiful, it means you value it. And if something is right or moral or good, then it really means you value it. It really means you value it. And the attempt to establish like what is valuable is very much dependent on who you're talking to. Because you can't just assume those people are going to agree with you. You have to explore with them so you can come to a shared understanding. And that's the art of rhetoric. That's when you make a statement and then you prove it. You persuade somebody to your line of thinking. I'll give you an example to illustrate this, which is a rhetorical device. You give an example to help illustrate something. And in Sanskrit, this is called Shaka Chandra Nyaya, or the logic of the moon and the branch. Let's say Kaustubha ji and I are out in the nighttime, and Kaustubha goes, "Look at the moon, Tukaram, it's so beautiful." And I'm like, "I can't find the moon. I'm looking all over, Kaustubha. Where's the moon?" And he says, "It's right there. Look at that tree. In between the branches, there's the moon." And I go, "Oh, there it is." The moon isn't literally between the branches of the tree. The moon is up in the sky. But I'm near the tree. I can't find the moon because the sky's too vast. And so Kaustubha finds something close to me that I can use as a reference point. And then I use that to figure out where the moon is. That's the value of analogy. You take something that's abstract or outside of your frame of reference, you compare it legitimately to something within your frame of reference, and you come closer to it. And in Sanskrit, that's called Shaka Chandra, or branch moon Nyaya, logic, branch moon logic. You compare it to something close to you, in this case, a tree, and then you get your frame of reference. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about in terms of establishing what is good. I say to Raghunath, "Hey, Raghunath, you got to be a vegan. Why are you still eating meat? You've been around for decades and you're still eating meat." Of course, Raghunath is a vegan. He doesn't eat meat, but just hypothetically. I'm like, "Raghunath, what are you doing? You're hanging out too much with Joe Rogan. You're hunting with that knucklehead, and you're eating a bunch of meat. And like, you know, you got to learn to like, you know, be a little more discerning." And Raghunath's like, "Well, why should I stop eating meat?" And I go through the litany of reasons why you should stop eating meat. And I say to Raghunath, hey, it's bad for the environment. And Raghunath says to me, I hate the environment. I'm glad it's bad for the environment. And I say to Raghunath, but if it messes up the environment, it's going to ruin life for your kids, the next generation. And Raghunath says, I hate my kids. Like you just told me I can ruin their life. That's great. I'm going to keep doing it. Well, animals feel pain. Great. I'm a sadist. I like to cause pain. But you don't cause pain to your dog. But you do cause pain to these other animals, which have the same neural network. They have the same C neuron fibers. They feel pain the same way that, your dog does, or you do for that matter. And Raghunath goes, yeah, I'm a hypocrite too. I love being a hypocrite. And I go through this like litany. Oh, it's bad for your health. Good. I want to die sooner. Well, why don't you kill yourself? I don't believe in suicide. But if I can eat my way to death, then I'm going to do that. That sounds better for me. And I go through and I'm trying to find something that he's going to find persuasive. And he refuses to give me anything. He doesn't mind being called a hypocrite or a sadist or illogical or unreasonable or whatever it might be, or, hateful of the environment or his children or mankind or whatever. Then I can't win the argument, because every attempt to determine what is valuable, what should be done, what you ought to do. This was called the is-ought dilemma by David Hume, the famous Scottish philosopher. Nowadays it lives on as what's called the fact-value distinction. You can't move from fact to value, at least not easily. Somebody has to agree, I place value on that. And so if you want to figure out what is good, which really means what is valuable, what should I do? How should I behave? What should I pursue? What should I value in my life enough that I pursue it? The only way to do that is to get in the mud with somebody and try to figure out what are shared axioms that you guys can live by. Mm. And you have to get in the mud, and you have to learn the lost art of rhetoric, and you have to engage with people. And what convinces one person may not convince the other. And so even if there are, objective reasons, it's very difficult to reach those with somebody who's an unwilling participant, and you need to become expert at the art of persuasion. Once you do that, you can figure out what is good, and then you can figure out what is a good friend, husband, parent, mother, father, etc. So anyway, that's a little something on axioms. I can still answer your question, but it's almost like when somebody asks
we didn't even get to good yet. We just got to good. That's but it was interesting. It was interesting. I want to just share something interesting about Tukaram. Sometimes he'll pause, and the pause will be like a 6-7 second pause. And and it's different than when I pause, because usually when I'm paused, it's almost like pulling over the car and like spinning around like I'm completely lost. But Tukaram's pauses, there's thousands of little things firing, hundreds of things filtering down what is the correct answer. He's actually really thinking through those pauses. I really appreciated that. Okay, so we figured out we have to get to some equal understanding of what good is, which we still haven't got to the point, but I understand what is good for one is not good for another. What is it? Can we move past that? I do appreciate breaking down language.
I'll go real fast.
It's okay. So we are limited in time, and you have a lot to offer, and even that was incredibly valuable. And I just, truthfully, when I'm around Tukaram, I just like to shut up, and that's a rare thing for me. I shut up and I pray to Jesus that the guy doesn't call on me. What did I just say? See, this is what I'm praying does not happen right now. Okay, did you like what I said? What did I say? And that's where I go, and I tell you, if you listen to his classes on Instagram, oh my God, I feel bad for the people when Tukaram says, okay, what do you think about this? And you don't know whether to raise your hand, because you're going to get it if you do. And if you don't raise your hand, you're going to get it. That's why I listen later in the day where he can't call on me, but now I'm face to face with him. So go on anywhere you want to. Just go. Just call on Kaustubha and not myself.
Hey, Carlos, just so you know, I do say, I'm aware I say, are you following? It looks terrible online, but what I'm doing, just so you know, is there's always a group of people in the room. And so when I'm saying, are you following? I'm looking at each person in the eyes and I'm saying, are you following? So I know whether to keep going on the point we're on or whether to move on. And I realize when you're watching online, it's just like, oh my God, why is he saying, are you following 50 times? It's because I'm looking at each person in the room and I'm like, are you following? Are you following? And I'm trying to gauge how much of the room is with me. And so anyway, I just happened to see that on my thing. Hey, Kaustubha ji, you want to respond to what I've said so far?
I could, but we have like 4 minutes left, and I would love to hear what a good friend is.
Oh, is it that we're down to that? Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Good means that you are the essence of what the thing's supposed to be. So a good boat is able to carry people across the water. It gets into the dharma of something, the essence of something, fundamentally what that thing does. So a good teacher, obviously, the critical thing of a good teacher is they possess knowledge and a willingness to share that knowledge. And that knowledge could also be a skill. So if you possess knowledge or you possess a skill and you're willing to bequeath that to somebody, that's the essence of a good teacher. A good friend is based on mutual affection and trust. Mutual affection and trust and regard for one another. It's a very mutual relationship. I like to think of relationships between, even with your upline and your downline, is really being fundamentally friendship. So when you talk about being good to people who are suffering, that love for people who are suffering is called compassion. That same love for your peers goes in the name of friendship. That love towards a junior makes you a teacher because you see that what they need from you and the way you can love them is to teach them and bring them up. And so really the same disposition and desire to love somebody and help them be a better person, be the best they can be, what Thomas Aquinas calls the will to good, the will for the other to do good, the will for the other to grow, the will for the other to be happy. That basic love then turn towards a spouse in a romantic way, a friend in a filial way, a student as somebody in need of guidance, an elder as service and helping them with their mission. That same towards suffering people manifests as compassion. That same basic love, that desire to help others and to be good to others, then turns into what it means to be a good friend, what it means to be a good teacher, what it means to be a good parent. And so parent is like a teacher, only sometimes sometimes with a parent, actually, in a lot of ways, being a teacher and a parent is the same. Whereas with a teacher, because it's a chosen relationship, sometimes you cut people, but commitment is very, very strong. With a parent, almost uncuttable, no matter what the person does. And so and it's also with a parent, there's a providing of actual stuff, protection in the case of men usually, and nurturing in the case of women. Because if you want to be a father and distinguish yourself from being a mother and not just be a parent, then you got to look at what makes you a man. And what makes men is physical strength. And what makes women is that they carry children and they lactate. And so nurturing, it's not that men don't have to cultivate their feminine side, but nurturing is the essence of what it means to be a woman and therefore a mother. And strength is what it means to be a man and therefore a father. Otherwise, if you say being a good father means caring or this or that, you're really denigrating women because you're saying something that's specific to men, but not to women. And so when you get to the essence of fatherhood, you get to the essence of being a man. And then you can say what it means to be a good father is now what it means to be the essence of what a father is to a child. And that's the way you get around the is-ought dilemma or the fact-value distinction. And you can answer all these questions. You want to comment on that, Kaustubha ji? I ran through the list.
No, well, thank you very much. I mean, yeah, it was. I appreciate you ran through the list quick.
It was fast. He's one of those guys that Tukaram can speak very, very fast. And just sometimes when I speak fast, I stumble for words. He uses bigger words when he speaks fast. Bigger words, more concise, more lucid, but going faster.
Kaustubha ji, what do you think?
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, but to be honest, I would like to go deeper. In other words, in a sense, you defined what a good friend is. But I think what we're really asking, even though it's not phrased that way, is personally, in your own life? Are there things that you could share with us in your own friendships? Something that might not be within that tight definition that you provided,
I'll do
that's
that.
particularly
Sure.
meaningful.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe
I'll
let's say
do
like
that.
this way, especially meaningful for us aspiring bhakti yogis like that.
Sure. Commitment, loyalty, and commitment. And so, which are really the same term. Loyal is you follow through. Sometimes they like to define loyalty as a feeling, but it's actually not. Loyalty and commitment. So if you want to be a friend, you know what my son says, my son Shekar, one of my boys, he says, if you want to have a friend, you should be a friend. He pulled that out when he was 5.
Pretty good.
So I was like, man, that's it. Like, thus spake my son. And so commitment. You want to be a bhakta? Be committed to your practice. You want to be a friend? Be committed to that individual. You want to be a spouse? Be committed to your spouse. Make them your soulmate. Find somebody you're reasonably compatible with, and then make them your soulmate by the strength of your commitment. I've been married for 23 years. I got 6 kids, but what's probably more impressive than 6 kids, which shows something about my virility, is that I've been married to one person. I've only been with one person my whole life.
It's a rare thing if you've got 6 kids nowadays. Generally, it's sort of like, it's like, I think 6 is the new 16. You're like an old school Mormon, my friend.
That's right.
Right? I come from 7, but that was like sort of not so weird.
Yeah, it was like a couple generations back.
Yeah.
And so I got 6 kids, and I got a wife of 23 years, and I'm the only person she's ever been with. She's the only person I've ever been with. We're committed to each other. Commitment is the grease that makes the machine run in all relationships, romantic, with your juniors, with your seniors. You become committed. And so if there was one thing I was going to share that's a defining feature of my life, I'm not afraid to commit.
Thank you.
How old were you when you got into bhakti?
15, 16. I'm
When did you
48
get,
now.
where did you get your PhD from? What did you major in that you got your PhD in?
I just, you know what? I got a high school diploma, and funny enough, my high school I went to, I got kicked out of a couple high schools, and then went to this other high school called the Venice Skills Center, right in the middle of like Cracktown, USA, and where I was living at the time. And so at that time, it was like a dangerous place, like a serious dangerous place. There's a whole story behind it, but we're at the time.
Yeah. Venice
and
Beach in the
in the 80s,
early 90s or late 80s. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, the mid-late 80s. And so they actually they contacted me recently and said, we've still got your high school diploma. I got no formal education. I joined the Hare Krishna movement. Everything I know, I learned from my teachers. And that's my whole scene. I got no formal education to speak of.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Very impressed. If it's okay, Tuka, because we had mic issues, we're just going to go a little bit over, if that's okay. Do you mind?
I mean, I'm hanging. I'm here.
Okay, cool. All right. So let's try to get at least one more question in, Kaustubha. Where do you want to go?
Oh, wherever you think,
Unless you have unless you want to take it back into a Krishna miracle and find out, where Tukaram came from and what was like the defining thing in his life that said, you know what, I got to give my life to God. That could also be a pretty interesting angle.
Tim just mentioned something. I'm just going to comment on because I saw it.
Sure.
You're right. I do have a formal education, Tim. I moved to India, spent near a decade there, and got classical, formal training and traditional training in our ritual, in language, and, in our philosophy. And so I did receive a formal education from my gurus. I just didn't go to an academic
accredited institution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's an institution I chose to give my life to. And so obviously I think it's accredited in some kind of higher sense. One of my teachers, Hridananda Maharaj, he went and got a PhD from Harvard in his 40s. And I asked him one time, I said, was it tough? And he goes, it was easy. He goes, I joined the ashram. I lived in a Hare Krishna ashram. He goes, going to college and getting a PhD was a cakewalk. And I was like, true that. I appreciated that a lot. Anyway, back to you, Raghunath. What do you want to ask me?
You're sort of like, what was the pivotal moment in your life that said, you know what? I've got to give my life to Bhakti. I mean,
You
right
want my
now it's a very
story?
gradual process. A lot of us are in gradual process of adding spirit to our life, relinquishing things that we're attached to that hurt us. But you were one of these persons that, like in my generation, your generation, Kaustuba's generation, we were like, let's get out of material life. Let's move into an ashram. What was it? Generally, there was some type of like clincher. Would you like to share that?
Sure. Um, I think I also gradually joined our tradition. I think you guys probably did too. And here's what I mean. I remember I thought if I move into the ashram, I'm going to see Krishna in like within 6 months for sure.
See
If I
Krishna
surrender my
like
life,
face to face?
like I'll embrace Krishna and dance with Krishna in 6 months. I remember thinking this when I was 17. And then I joined, an ashram and became a monk. And I remember, actually, it was in New York. It was actually like right around the same time I met Kaustubha. But I was sleeping in a bus outside the Skemmerhorn Temple, and I could hear, automatic. I mean, I was back when Brooklyn was like a legit rough part of town.
That was a very rough part of town. Now it's like one of the most desired pieces of real estate around.
Yeah, I'm aware of the gentrification of Brooklyn, but back then it was legitimately a dangerous part of town. And I was sleeping. We had a gutted bus, and so I was sleeping on the floor of a gutted bus. And then they didn't have any hot water in the temple, so it was even in the summertime when I was there. It was really cold water coming out of the Hudson, and it was like these, huge joint showers, like joining the army or something like that. That shower room at the temple in Skemmerhorn was like
a
block.
jail. It was like a prison.
Yeah, it was like a jail. I like some dude was like hanging out in his underwear, like doing like sets with like a dirty barbell in there, mad dogging me at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, am I gonna have scrap with this dude in the shower block? Like I thought, I thought I was gonna have to scrap with that guy in the shower block. He was like mad dogging me while I was trying to get in there to take a bath in his underwear, and I thought he was going to attack me or something like that. But anyway, so I thought I was going to see Krishna, and I remember I had I brought like a Walkman with me, and I had all bhajans, but I had one. I brought one. I don't know why. It wasn't even my favorite band, but I brought like a Rush. I think it was 2112. Rush is a progressive rock band from the 70s and 80s. I brought that with me, and I was like, I'm going to have to renounce this and throw it away someday because I'm giving my life to Krishna. It was like the one last little vestige of materialism I brought with me.
I brought the Les Mis soundtrack cassette. I'm serious.
Very easy to renounce.
And so I'm in this broken down bus, sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag, and I'm bathing in the Hudson water, which is freezing, getting mad dogged by probably like the Pujari or something like that. And they shaved my head, and they put me down in that dungeon that was a kitchen, and I did like 12 hours of dishes my first day at the temple there. And I was a vegan, and the Hare Krishnas were lacto-vegetarians. So I got berated by some of the leaders. Vivi, I'm sorry, I'm using American slang. Mad dogging is when a man, generally speaking, stares at another man and glares at him and indicates that he wants to fight you. And if you look away, then you become a chump. And if you meet their gaze, then sometimes it escalates into fisticuffs and you get into a fight. It's a term used in English for that kind of like mad dog, like two dogs looking at each other, and so that's what that guy was doing to me in his underwear while lifting weights and getting a pump on. Yeah, like an alpha dog type thing. You got it. It's like straight, like wolf pack type stuff. It's very like it's like primatological. It's like men, men at their most visceral. Okay, so back to what I was saying. So they put me down in that dungeon that was a kitchen. I did dishes for like 8, 10, 12 hours. It was so bad. My shoes melted. I was wearing Vans and they melted. I had to walk around Brooklyn barefoot to go find some flip-flops, which is American slang for sandals. And they shaved my head. And I got it was almost like a hazing ritual, It was rough, man. And it's like 4:00 in the morning. They came to wake us up, and they do a big kirtan at 4:00 in the morning. And so you'd be trying to sleep. I was up all night at Washington Square Park, and I was building the Rath Yatra. I roll back, and I get like maybe like 20 minutes of sleep, and then somebody's got a pair of those jhampa, those huge kartals, and they're like in my face, jumping up and down doing kirtan to wake me up for the morning program. And it was like,
I remember that little musical party going through the ashram, waking everybody up. Kaustubha, you remember? Bang, 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 bang.
I don't, but now that you mention it, maybe it's maybe
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, and then that morning, I literally slept like 20 minutes that whole night and been up all night. And in Washington Square Park, and I came back and they forced me to the morning program. And then some sannyasi said, hey, go drive this flatbed truck for the entire Rath Yatra through New York City that you've never been to before. And, because we have a kirtan group on the back of the flatbed truck. And you have to drive them for the whole Rath Yatra. So I missed the whole Rath Yatra. I had to drive the truck. And that was like, and then I had to take down the festival site, and then we drove to Chicago that night, which was I remember being like a 12 or 16 hour run. It was no joke. So I guess what I was going to say was this: although I made that radical physical act of joining an ashram, it didn't actually make me a different person. I was still me, just sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag, taking a cold bath, traveling around the world, doing a lot of menial service and and I like living in this man's army, so to speak. But like fundamentally in my heart, I was still going through a very slow evolution. There's no way to cheat it. What we do is real simple. We get you to follow a daily lifestyle that's conducive to self-realization. We figure out a way to convince you to do that. And then once you do that, and that's self-sculpted as well. It's not that we have a boilerplate for everybody. That gets self-sculpted as well. Once you do that, we then try and keep you in the fight forever. If you think about what we do, like we get no days off. I've been chanting 16 rounds a day for 32 years. I've been following the four regular principles for 32 years. It's a lifetime of devotion. It's daily. It's my daily practice. I have a daily practice and I maintain my daily practice. I make a commitment, then I keep a commitment. I make a promise, then I make good on my promise. I start something, then I never stop it. And a good life of a devotee means once you start, you never stop. And you keep doing more until you've given your whole life. And at a certain point, even a lifetime isn't enough. You're giving your heart, and that transcends time. And it takes you to a place beyond what time can touch. That's our path. That's always been our path. That's every serious spiritual tradition's path. They've got something which is so beautiful, so worthwhile, so amazing that you started and you never stop. And what you're doing here, you end up doing there as well, in that world. You do it in this world, you do it in that world. And there's no quit, because what you're doing is beautiful enough and valuable enough, and you place value on it, and you see the value in it so much that like you give everything. Shall we call it there?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tukaramji.
Beautiful man. Beautiful story. Beautiful person in my life. Thank you, Tukaram, for joining us. Tukaram.das on Instagram. You can listen to his lectures. Big inspiration for me, as well as the entire community. And we got to have you back if that's okay with you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody for joining us here. Thanks to everybody on Facebook. You want to keep this party going on Facebook? Well, you can binge listen to Wisdom of the Sages on Apple Podcasts. You can just go there, and while you're doing whatever yard work on the subway, you can listen to transcendental information. Putting in transcendental information in our brains on downtime instead of CNN or Fox News. You're just going to get angry. Why waste your time? Put in some transcendental information that's going to change the trajectory of the way you move your life, change your choices, and inspire you in this world. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. This is that time of the day where we dance and sing in front of our computer screen. And again, if you have any questions for us, you can email us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Mary goes through all those messages, and we have questions and answers days, or join us here on our Zoom group. We will give you the secret codes. Thanks, everybody.